everyone, my name is Jenna, but you guys can call me Jen. Welcome back to my channel. Welcome to a September wrap-up. We're gonna go over the books that I read this month. We're just gonna chat about them, as is apropos of most wrap-ups. This month I ended up reading 11 books and I believe DNFing 2. We had a good variety of reads. It was my birthday month, so I do like to read a lot of favorites or like really what I've been wanting to read during the year. Around my birthday, I prioritize me during this month. So of course I read 5 fantasy books, 1 YA fantasy, 1 sci-fi, 2 literary fictions, 1 thriller, and 1 graphic novel. I also had a wild range of ratings. We had everything from a DNF, a 1 star, a 2 star, 2.5, 3, 4 star, 4.5, and 5 star this month. Whole whack ton of ratings, my friends. So let's get into it. First up, I read Cult Classic this month. Looking back at the beginning of this month and looking at the books that I was reading, I cannot believe that was this past month. I cannot believe it was September. It feels like years ago. September has been a lot. But yes, I read Cult Classic first this month. I ended up only giving it 2 stars. It was coming off of that whole chronicle of my August reading month where like I was trying to find a 5 star and like nothing was hitting as a 5 star. There were some 4 stars, some 4.5 stars, of course, and it was an abysmal last 2 weeks of August. So Cult Classic continued that a little bit into September. Honestly, Cult Classic, I have zero feelings towards Cult Classic. I immediately unhauled it. My friend now has it. I read it and I was like, it was definitely a book with words on a page. That's all I can give it, really. No feelings at all, so 2 stars. Then I reread Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. I was doing this as a part of a rereading video and also because I really wanted to reread it. I am not sure if I'm going to continue the rereading video because I am a little bit of the way through The Starless Sea, but we'll see how that read goes from here. There's just a lot of other books that I really want to read. A lot of other books on my TBR, on my autumnal TBR that I would love to read as well. So rereads do take up a lot of time, but I love rereading, which as you guys know. And this reread was exceptional. So if you guys don't know, Legends and Lattes inspired my own cozy fantasy books. You can kind of see a little luck there, which is coming out so soon. In like, from when I'm filming this, in like 14 days. Insanity! I'm still working on paperback pre-orders. I do apologize, but ebook pre-orders are open now. Anyways, this definitely inspired me to start writing my own cozy fantasy series with the first one, A Second Story. So I absolutely adore it. It's one of my favorite books of all time. And this reread did solidify that in that position. And I gave it 5 stars. So far, I have told you nothing about the books that I've read. I honestly could not really tell you what Cult Classic is about because I don't remember it. So I do apologize about that one. But of course, Legends and Lattes is about Viv, who decides to stop adventuring, retire officially, hang up her sword, and open up a cafe, a coffee shop, if you will. Probably not a cafe, a coffee shop. And she ends up building it from scratch, renovating it, all this kind of stuff, making her own little found family, hiring Tandri, and of course, hiring Thimble, who's this little rat can on the back, who is my favorite. And it's just soft and sweet and wonderful, a slice of life in a high fantasy world. I love it so much. Then the curse turned around right away because we had a 5 star, brand new 5 star, which was The Sword of Kaigan by M.L. Wong. This book ruined me. Top to bottom, ruined me. I swear to God, I don't know what's going on with M.L. Wong's writing. It immediately sucked me in. Page 8, I was like, I'm in. I want to know everything about this family. So this follows 2 POVs for the most part. We have, and they're both from the Matsuda family. We follow the mom, Mizaki, and we follow her son, Mamoru, as they are kind of living in this moment of tumultuous time. Mizaki has a really cool backstory, and Mamoru is a 14-year-old boy kind of coming into his own story, and there's like, they're on kind of the precipice of battle and war. It was so fucking good. Truly, 5 stars. Then I read my friend's book club pick for the month, which was How to Kill Men and Get Away with It by Katie Brent, and this was definitely a fun read. I listened to the audiobook as I was going around doing a bunch of errands on a Saturday right before the book club, and there is nothing like listening to a woman go from being intimate with a partner to then having a scene where she's brutally mutilating men and murdering them and then cleaning up the crime scene while you're looking at Yarn at Michael's. So I will say that is a fun experience. But honestly, the book itself was kind of subpar. Like, it could have done things so much better. It could have gone so many different ways. I think it was kind of flat and it was too easy for our main character. But I gave it like 3 stars. And it was a fun discussion and a fun experience to read. If you couldn't tell by the title of this book, it's about a woman who decides to take it into her own hands and kill men who are problematic. She is also an influencer, so she literally has nothing else going on in her life. The point in this book, she decides to start killing men, like using Tinder and dating apps as her like hunting ground, and she feels justified because all these men are garbage in her eyes. And also in my eyes, they were awful men. But it kind of goes a little off the rails. I don't know. It's I wish there was more stakes to it, but it was kind of fun. Female range is fun. Then you go read Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. So I originally put this on hold from the library back when Fourth Wing first came out. I was like 70 something in line. I was just like, you know what? I know the FOMO is going to be too real. I really want to know what this book is about, even if it's absolutely abhorrent and terrible. And I kind of went in knowing that I wasn't going to love it a huge amount, just from general vibes, from seeing other people's reviews and people talking about how the writing wasn't that great and all this kind of stuff, and how it's a like romance reader's fantasy book. And I was like, all right, okay, I'm gonna go in with very, very few expectations, and I fucking loved this. I read this in one sitting. I couldn't put it down. I burned through this book. I had so much fun. Is it a good book? No, not at all. Not a literary masterpiece in any way, shape, or form. But I had so much fun with this book. God, I keep going back to the same thing when I talk about this book, and it's one thing that my friend said, my friend Hannah, who was reading it at the same time as me. She said that it was definitely a very divergent book. Like, it feels like what it felt like to read Divergent when you were a teenager. And I'm like, that is 100% it. This is Divergent, but like sexy, you know? Like, it reads kind of YA-ish. It is very digestible. It's first person. It's so action-packed. It doesn't let you go, but it's also so sexy. I honestly expected it to be more horny than it was. But there is a scene in here where our main character, Violet, blows out the windows of Satan's room with her powers. So I loved the trials. I loved the characters. I loved the dragons. I had so much fun. It gave me the feeling of that I haven't had in so long, where it was like reading a book when I was a teenager and just falling head over heels in love with it. So I ended up giving this 4 stars. I really, really enjoyed this, and I already pre-ordered book 2. So that's coming whenever that comes out I think in November. I'm so fucking excited to continue with this series. And I already want to reread this. Like, I was eating my words. I was so humbled in the vlog that this is featured in, because I was like, I don't really know if I'm gonna like it. I'm gonna see how far I get before I DNF it. Like, you know, one of those things. Fell head over heels in love with this book. It just, it has a nostalgia to it. I think that's what it is. It's just nostalgia, but with like sex for adults, which is so fun. It's about Violet Sorrengail, who lives in this world at the beginning, lives in this world. She has a chronic illness that makes her a little bit physically weaker than other people. And so it like takes a lot more energy for her to do stuff, that kind of thing. I can't remember the exact name of this chronic illness, so if someone knows it in the comments, please leave it down below. It's not specified in this book, but I know people are calling it this on the internet, and I think the author herself has like named it as that. It's about Violet, and she, at the beginning of this, has her path chosen to be a scribe. Her father was a scribe, but her mother and her sister are writers. So there's different like quadrants you can be in, different kind of like areas of study and practice and stuff like that. So then you can like rise up in the ranks and whatever. They're constantly at war, this society. So being a writer is to be a soldier, essentially. And so she is gonna be a scribe because that's what she's trained for her whole life, until one day her mom's like, psych, no one in this family can be anything but a writer, and you either become a writer or you die. And so she ends up being put through this trial, and she tries her damnedest the whole way through to succeed and stay alive. She's awesome. She's so good. She's such a cool character, and I really, really enjoyed reading from her point of view and getting from that. But yeah, that's kind of what it is. It's like a divergent-y type, you know how they were split into their different, like erudite and amity and stuff like that. They were just split into their different castes. I don't know if that's the actual word for it, but yeah, Fourth Wing, very similar in that. Trials, training, that whole thing. I also have included my own book on this list because I did read it. multiple times this month. So there is that. I did read A Little Luck many times. My baby right there. Then I have Morning Star by Pierce Brown, which is book 3 in the Red Rising trilogy. I finished this up this month. Man, what an ending. What an ending to this wonderful trilogy. If you want to know all my thoughts about all 3 of the books, go watch that vlog. It's a series video, so you can go to that playlist and find the video much easier instead of just scrolling back through my videos. But I really liked this. I gave it 4.5 stars. What an ending. What a perfect ending. Oh my God. Then I read and DNF'd 2 books, which were The Name Bearer by Natalia Hernandez and its sequel, The Follower of Flowers. So I read The Name Bearer and I only gave it 2.5 stars. I had so many issues with this book. I couldn't get behind the writing, and the pacing was weird, and the storytelling wasn't storytelling. It was kind of just telling. A lot of the relationships felt just told to us, not actually like shown and grown and real feeling. POVs were a little weird. We were majority, like 95% in the name bearer's head, who is our main character, and then like at one point we slip into another person's brain, and then at another point we just have a random one-off POV that is not in her POV, and an entirely different character's POV in an entirely different spot, and I just question why. The pacing was weird, the writing wasn't very good, all this kind of stuff. So I was like, okay, I kind of want to know what happens at the story though, so I did continue with this. I got like 75 pages in and DNF'd it. Because the issues were the same and I couldn't get through it. It is a Latin, indigenous, kind of like mythological fantasy, YA fantasy in my opinion, because this starts with our name bearer at 13 years old and it's a coming of age story. So that's kind of why I classify it as YA, and it's a little easier to read than adult fantasy. It doesn't feel like adult fantasy to me. And it follows the name bearer, who is this figure who in this world has no name, is taken from their family at like age 2-3, so they don't remember anything about them, is trained up to be this name bearer, trained up with the growing king and queen once they've been matched, and then once they have a child, the name bearer goes to the Flowers of Prophecy and gets a name from the Flowers of Prophecy to name said child. At the beginning of this, she goes to the Flowers of Prophecy, she like fulfills everything, and then the flowers tell her that the prince that was just born is not the rightful ruler and won't give her a name. So it kind of kicks off this whole thing of her having to flee and then grow up in this temple and all this kind of stuff. Yeah, unfortunate, but I didn't like them. Then I ended up reading Borders, which is a graphic novel adaptation of Thomas King's Borders, which is one of his short stories, and the art is by Natasha Donovan. I read this short story back in university, totally forgot that I read it in university, didn't know that that's what this was until I started reading it, and I was like, oh, I've read this before. I don't really love the story all that much. There's a lot going on. I studied it in uni. I get what's going on. It's not one of my favorites. But I will say the adaptation and the art style is gorgeous, and it made it an enjoyable little like 1-hour read. So 3 stars. It's got indigenous lives and borders and border crossings and like what side do you live on themes, if you will. Then I ended up reading Hurricane Season, which is one of my friend's book club picks for this month. So yeah, I read 2 book club books this month this is the book club pick for October. This is Hurricane Season by Fernanda Melchor. I do believe that's how you say her name. I hated this book. Fully hated. Gave it 1 star. It was an awful reading experience. I was so excited to go in because I read the premise and I was like, oh, this is gonna be witchy, this is gonna be really cool, because the premise gives you this, like, the whole thing is that this witch in this Mexican town dies, is murdered, and then it follows a variety of characters who are attached to her murder and or attached to someone who is attached to her murder in the aftermath. And like before, it's their whole like lives kind of thing, and I'm like, oh, that's gonna be a really interesting style to read, and it's a translated work, so I was like, okay, I'm ready for this witchiness. And it was an awful, painful experience, and as someone who doesn't get triggered by books very often, this book was hard to read and hard to listen to, because I tried to read it, but there are literally no paragraphs in this book. It is just a solid wall of text throughout. So I listened to the audiobook to help me get through it, and it just, the language was used to hurt, to cut, to get right down to your skin and just maim you. Like, the language in this is not kind. None of the characters are good or kind. I looked up the trigger warnings on this to send in the chat because I thought I was one of the first ones to start it. So I wanted to warn my other friends just to be kind, you know? I had to send 2 screenshots, and that wasn't even all of the content warnings. It was so much. The violence in this book was just abhorrent. And it wasn't even like insightful to read at all. And we barely got any information about the witch herself who was murdered. Like, it was just a bad reading experience. I really, really hated it. And I don't think it's a good book at all. I was reading through Goodreads reviews and I was shocked at how highly rated it was. So it might just be a me problem, but it's just not the kind of book that I like, and I really, really detested it. And then we finished the month with a good read, a little cute read, and that is Drinks and Sinkholes by S. Usher Evans. This is book 1 in the Weary Dragon Inn series. This is a cozy fantasy mystery series. Oh my god, I read this in like 2.5 hours on a Thursday night when it was raining, and it was like right when the colors were changing outside my window. Like right now, all the leaves across the street have basically fallen off the trees already. So this was such a good read. I enjoyed this so much. I ended up giving it 4.5 stars. It follows Bev, who is a amnesiac innkeeper who came to this little town of Pig's End Creek about 5 years previous. She doesn't remember who she is from before. She just knows who she is now. They gave her the name as of Beverage Wench, so she goes by Bev because of that. She runs an inn there called the Weary Dragon Inn. She's known for her rosemary bread. And she gets swept up in this mystery of these sinkholes that keep appearing. They don't know why they're appearing in this little town. There's a bunch of like Queen's soldiers who have arrived in town who are also staring at her inn. There's a little bit of a mystery with one of her like community members. Sheriff is incompetent, and the characters are just wonderful, and it's magical and it's mysterious, and I really enjoyed it. And book 2 comes out this October, so I'm very excited to get my hands on that when I can, when I'm not on a book buying ban. But I really, really enjoyed this and highly recommend it. Anyways, my friends, those are all the books that I read this month. What a ride, what a time. We read 11 books, including my own book, A Little Luck, which of course I'm giving 5 stars to because it's my own book. So that comes out so soon. It's unreal. And I hope it's all on your fall TBRs as we get to the end of October and beginning of November. It works for fall and winter because it is cozy, it is soft, it is cool, it is crisp. So I really hope you guys are excited about that. I haven't done a wrap up in so long. So it's kind of nice to chat and like give you diatribe about each of the books that I've read and why I rated them as I did. Anyways, I will catch you in another video very soon. Stay kind and keep on reading.